This is Madison Dean, and for my critical remix project, I decided to critique the reproduction of neoliberalism in Orleans. In the article we read, it told us 3 of neoliberalism traits: independence over interdependence, institutions as oppressive, and race, gender, sex, age as unrepresented in the text. I'm mainly focusing on the independence and more specifically, the relationship between Daniel and Finn. I will also discuss the institutions and how they are represented. Diving into that single story of independence over interdependence, we can look at the front cover of my dust jacket and see that I have drawn in Daniel and the baby because I thought that they should be represented due to the fact that they are main parts of the story along with Finn. But when looking at the original book jacket, all you see is Finn overlooking the ruins of Orleans. Even though Finn is not alone in her quest, the front of the book shows no hint to that. To further my argument on Orleans reproducing independence, I want to point a few things out from the book. Finn starts on the baby rescue mission before she meets Daniel, and she was handling things without him. For example, Mama Gentile's church scene. Finn escapes with her knowledge, not anybody else's. Then she meets Daniel and they start working together. Now, here's where my argument can appear weak, because people will argue and point out that the book is reinforcing interdependence because Daniel and Finn occasionally help each other out. I get it, I do. And even while doing this project, I had to question and make sure I was not contradicting myself. The way I look at interdependence is that I expect both parties to contribute equally or close to it, but Daniel in my eyes didn't contribute much. Yes, he was there and he helped a little, but Finn took the lead. She had the plans. I also understand that Finn took over because she was a native of Orleans and knew the land better, but Daniel could have helped her come up with ways to escape instead of staying in the background. Finn even says several times that Daniel was useless and she wishes to be rid of him. The only reason she is helping him is for her personal needs, which is to get the baby over the wall. And Daniel says he can do just that, so of course she helps him. We see this interaction at the blood farm on page 136. But do you think Finn would have helped Daniel out if he couldn't get the baby over the wall? If you focus on the language, when Finn talks about the mission, it never sounds like a Daniel and Finn thing. It sounds like a Finn and the baby mission. If anything, Finn is interdependent with the baby because she's the last tie to Lydia and the tribe, but not with Daniel. Overall, Finn ends up overshadowing Daniel, and to me, that's not interdependence. Also, on the front cover of my remix dust jacket, I drew in the wall with the vines going up that separates the Delta from the outer states. The wall is there for cautionary measures, so the fever doesn't spread. And at first, the government sends care packages over, but by the time Finn's 5, the government has completely stopped any kind of help that they were offering. They leave the sick to tend to the sick. The government turns their back on the victims and pretends they aren't there. Their lives became disposable in the eyes of the government. The Delta has to reach out on their own for help with organizations like Father John's or the Institute of Post-Separation Studies. And eventually, those became oppressive as well. As we see in the book, the institutions inside the wall turned sour and revealed that they were snakes. In class, we talked about how the marketplace was an empowering representation of some form of government. While that is true, most readers won't be able to identify with that government. They'll be able to identify with the outer states or United States government, and that one is shown as oppressive. Flipping to the back of my dust jacket, I replaced the original passage with this one. Taking a deep breath, Daniel pushed an arm through the vines. He could feel it, the crack in the wall, like a tunnel hidden from view. Behind him, Finn stood silhouetted against the searchlights, rain splattering the water around her. Her arms were raised, her face turned up, the bundle held high in the air. She rotated in a slow circle as the rain washed the mud from her skin. For an instant, she looked at him. The moment hung in the air, Finn's mouth curving into a smile. Seeing Daniel and the baby almost there, she turned away. He had made a promise to protect this child, to take her to a better life, and that's what he was going to do. I felt that the original passage wasn't giving credit to Daniel. While Finn ultimately executed the plan, she couldn't have kept her promise to Lydia without Daniel. And in the passage I chose, you see all three main characters, the baby, Daniel, and Finn. On the inside flap, I pretty much kept the summary the same, except for the few parts I underlined. Once again, I changed those spots to better reflect the reality of the book. One of the reasons I decided to critique this book is because it was fresh in my head, and also because people in society work together all the time. And this book showed me that even though it might appear that we're working together, maybe we're just taking advantage to better ourselves or someone we care about, which might not include the person or people we're working with. This brings me to the comment that Terrell made in class when I said Daniel and Finn were only together because of a deal. And he said, well, isn't that usually why people work together? But that's exactly the problem. Why can't we help a stranger just because we are a decent, rational being? Why does it have to be, if I scratch your back, then you scratch mine? Society should just do the right thing without a motive. While people can disagree with my rationale of interdependence, I hope my argument for why I believe this to be a reproduction of neoliberalism is clear, and that they can at least understand why I feel this way.